second best to the best treasurer in the state of Ohio. And I put a lot of stock in everything that Chris Rokakis said to me. So I'm going to turn over to Mr. Rokakis the meeting, and he can speak.
Thanks, Sam. And can I stand here at this end? Is that okay?
Please, that's
okay.
great.
And I've said to people, nobody has embraced the concept of land banking in Ohio more than Sam Mancusa. In fact, in part of my new job at the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, we're setting up land banks all over Ohio. We'll have about 15 or 16 up by the third quarter of 2012. And we always talk about the varying models of land banking. And there's one like Cuyahoga County where they have a lot of money but a lot of problems, and they're taking in 100 properties a month minimum. And then there are other land banks that are very, almost, I wouldn't say passive, but they're going very slow. They're only taking property. They know exactly what they're going to do with them. Lucas County being the example. And then I said, and then there's Trumbull County. I said, where the county treasurer is so involved, he's actually boarding up houses and gotten very, very directly involved in this in a way that is good for Trumbull County. But I got to tell you, Sam, it scares a lot of the treasurers who only want to work part-time, and they say, well, we don't want to do the Mancusa model. Okay. Anyway, so we appreciate what you do. And in land banking, quick history, I spent 19 years in the Cleveland City Council. I became the treasurer back in 1997. There is no county treasurer anymore in Cuyahoga County. My real claim to fame is I was one of 2 of the 11 public officials in Cuyahoga County that under FBI investigation. I know the clerk of courts is here. Me and Jerry first. Anyway, I suppose I shouldn't make fun of that. But there is no county government anymore. It's been blown up. There's no elected county treasurer. It's an appointed job now under the CFO. 2 charter counties in Ohio are Summit and now Cuyahoga County. But anyway, when I was treasurer, third year in 2000, I had a group of Cleveland City Councilmen come to see me, and they said, "You've been following this mortgage thing." And I said, "What mortgage thing?" "I have one, I pay it every month." And they said, no, you got to look at foreclosures. And I admit I had really kind of fallen out of touch with that issue. And I learned that in 2000, the average baseline here in Cuyahoga County was 3,500 foreclosures. By 2000, post-securitization, we were at 7,000 foreclosures in the county, and Cuyahoga County in that year, 2000, led the country in private mortgage foreclosures. So did Ohio, by the way. And we led for 6 straight years. We led all the way to 2006 when the real estate bubble burst. There were 14,000 foreclosures in Cuyahoga County in 2006. So the bubble burst. Ohio's not even in the top, I don't know, 10. The sand states have come in. But the damage done, cumulative impact of these mortgages and these foreclosures on Ohio has been devastating. So we knew we had to come up with something that might help us now to deal with not just the foreclosure crisis, but post-foreclosure crisis. And that's when we came upon the model started by a guy named Dan Kildee up in Flint, Michigan. Kildee was the treasurer of Genesee County. Flint is a very distressed city. Had about 78,000 General Motors jobs in 1978. They've got about 4,000 now. And he knew he had to do something with this explosion of vacant properties. Started this quasi-public entity, which is what we have here. Had the authority to take property, but more than that, had a funding mechanism and could be aggressive in going after these. So we copied the Kildee model. We worked with some really smart people, and I think we put together the best land bank model in the country. And the bill that passed initially was Cuyahoga County only. I don't know if you're aware of the battle that went on. Sam knew that the legislators didn't trust the model. They said, we'll give it to the Republic of Cuyahoga, but nobody else. They didn't trust us. They viewed us as a different state. But after a year, there was an outcry around Ohio led by Peter Uvagi from Toledo, and the bill was amended in House Bill 313 to allow counties over 60,000 population. So that's the quick history. When I left the county government, when my job ended at the end of December 2010, I joined the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. It's a 14-county land conservation organization. The director is somebody that had been following land banking for a long time. He said, I want you to join us and set up land banks in every one of our 14 counties that were eligible. 2 were not. And we talked about that. Sam was already up and running, but I said, let's try. And my job has morphed from setting up land banks in Northeast Ohio to more than that, because well, let me tell you who's up in Northeast Ohio. We now are up, of course, Trumbull. Sam was the first, but we're up in Mahoning. We're up in Erie County, Sandusky. We are almost up in Starr County, probably in 2 weeks. We'll be up in Summit early May. We're working to organize a resolution passed by the commissioners in Lake County. Lorain County's resolution is next week. We met with Medina County Commissioners yesterday. They're coming forward. And now moved to other parts of Ohio, because the board that tells me what to do, when they heard there was interest in other parts of the state, they said it's not a bad idea for us to have land banks in parts of the state that aren't necessarily blue, Democrat, Northeast Ohio, but go around the state and see if you can't work with other communities. So we are also up in Lucas County, we're up in Montgomery County, which is Dayton. We organize in a land bank, a very good land bank up in Hamilton County, Franklin County, Columbus, and we have 4 other counties, Richland, Mansfield, and others, in the process of formation. So that was my job, more from Northeast Ohio to all of Ohio, but then it became clear to me early on that we had to find a way to deal with the vacant property problem. And the vacant property problem, you're living it, you're here in the valley, you know how bad it is, but I would say as bad as it is here, it's worse in other parts of Ohio, worse in Dayton, worse in Cleveland. Larger community, but a much more serious problem. And it became clear to me, it was a mayor that said to me, do you have money for demolition and land banks? And I said, well, there'll be some. And he said, look, if you don't have money for demolition, he said, it's like a new car without gas. Looks good, but doesn't take me anywhere. So it became very clear to us that we had to really start to advocate mechanisms or funding resources, which is tough given the environment. So we started to work on the Attorney General, actually the fall of last year, because we knew there was a 50-state settlement coming between the banks and the state attorneys general over the robo-signing agreement. And to Mike DeWine's credit, we're different parties, but we started working on Attorney General DeWine in the fall, had a meeting in December, and had a full staff meeting in February, and on February 8th or 9th he announced that he's taking 3/4 of his discretionary money, or $75 million, and devoting it to demolition in Ohio's communities. Now, he has a pretty stringent requirement. He has said, look, $75 million is be helpful, but I really think that we need to get commitment from local governments and match. And they've really kind of stuck to that proposal. And part of what I wanted to talk about today was that very issue. That I know, and I'm not here, I'm just here, the Wien Foundation, we have a grant with the Wien Foundation to assist and advise land banks both here and in Mahoning. So I'm going to offer some advice, and that is that at 2.5%, you are below the statutory limitation of 5%. And I think it is critical that you find a way to leverage the resources this land bank has to be prepared to match the Attorney General's money. That money will not be here until late June or early July, but it's coming. And I would tell you that other counties and other land banks have moved to borrow money, to have a pot of money set aside to leverage the AG's money. I would tell you, for example, there's been a borrow, and I realize it's a bigger county, but there's $5 million being committed by the Cuyahoga County Land Bank. That leverages 5, so that's $10 million for demolition. There is excess money in a DTAC fund, complicated, we won't get into it now, that the prosecutor has there. I don't believe your prosecutor has that excess, but the prosecutor there is committing $5 million excess from his DTAC, so that's another 5. So we have the 5 and 5 or 10, that means they're up to 20, and the city of Cleveland is coming up with $4 million, so they can match. So all of a sudden we're at 14, and 14 gets you 28. So there are other people looking at this pot of money. I know they're assembling their resources down in Hamilton and down in Montgomery County, Dayton. So if I could make any recommendation here today, is that you take full advantage of this possibility. And I know I talked to Commissioner Food on the way in, he said, you know, it's really not fair. We're all suffering from cuts in local government funds. I get that. We're all struggling. But I think the point the Attorney General has made, and he is holding fast, is I want to make sure every dime can be brought to the table to match what I'm doing. So the $75 million at an average of $7,000 a house doesn't just get you 10,000 houses demolished around the state, but potentially gets you 20,000. And look, as treasurer for 14 years, and you know this, as I travel this state, these vacant properties are an absolute cancer, folks. I don't have to tell you. When I came in on Route 5, I quickly counted, I know they're township properties there, I quickly counted 6 or 7 properties that needed to be demolished. How do I know? Well, one didn't have a roof, and windows were missing, and doors were gone, and they were boarded, and clearly nobody was moving into those.